You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call. I'm joined here by Brad Hunt. This is part 2 of a podcast we recorded with the guys from the Northern Hunter podcast. We got Dalton, we got Jay, we got Mo. Great guys, all from Alaska, doing a hunting podcast that's focused on Alaska and what you need. Part 1, we really covered gear, and we talked about bear hunting. We talked about the snow, getting bears out of dens, because we have a book. We have a hunt on the books for that this year, Ryan and I. But this episode, part 2, we get into more discussions about these guys, what their show is doing, why they're doing it. We get into some questions about the conundrum that all of us find ourselves in that promote hunting content and empower people to go hunt, which is in direct conflict to the idea that we don't want anybody else to ever go to our hunting spots or to go and hunt where we hunt. And so it's such a tough balance. And so having spent time in Alaska and around a lot of Alaskans, I find the culture there to be a little different than down here in the lower 48.
They hold hunting near and dear to their heart and don't want to spread it out.
Yeah. So we had that discussion on the show. It's an interesting conversation, and there's more there too. So hope you enjoy the show. If you like the show we produce and you want to support us, go and check out Mountain Ops.
Yep.
Right now you can get a merino hoodie over there, which I really like their merino hoodie.
Absolutely.
And they've got supplements. I don't think I go a day without having some Mountain Ops Ignite.
It's true. And I will say the new Mountain Ops Ignite Light is money. It's so good.
There's a bunch of flavors of that. I use the Yeti for pre-workout, and I like blaze shots when I'm on the road making drives and I need to stay up all night. Things like that.
The workout shorts are one of my favorites too.
You got some great workout clothes as well. When you shop over there and use the code GRITTY, it helps us out and you get a discount. So good stuff there. So check them out, and then use the code GRITTY over at Peaks if you need some gear. If you don't have a pair of gaiters, you don't have some trekking poles, you need a floorless shelter, a teepee, which we highly recommend. Man, we love what Peaks has. The headlamp is a banger. It's tough to beat for what we do. Can't recommend the gear enough. So use the code GRITTY over there and check it out. And if you're in the market for a freeze dryer, we have a link in the description field of all of our videos on our YouTube and Rumble channels. If you go and you click on that link to Harvest Right, you can get yourself a freeze dryer with that link.
Yep.
And you'll get a discount, and it helps us as well, again, to keep doing the show. So enjoy today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the Northern Hunter podcast. Stay gritty. Let's shift gears a little bit, getting off of the snowshoeing and the packing and stuff and the camping out there. And I like all of that. That's good stuff. One of the favorite shows I like to watch is Billy Malls. It's like excellent. It's like I've watched every single one of his hunt films. Every time he drops some 3-hour thing, I'm sitting down and I'm grabbing something to eat, and I'm going to just soak it in and just be in Alaska, because that's what it is, just being in Alaska. Yeah. And it's not overly produced, but it's not underproduced. And basically he's doing the things I want to experience through him. Now, and Billy has killed a million things. I mean, I have no place to talk when it comes to the experience that he has. So it's confusing to me, because I see, like, let's discuss a little bit like shot placement, because I see Billy tell his guys where to aim, but we tell guys to aim a totally different spot with bears than Billy does. And it kind of surprises me, simply because in my experience, and I thought, well, is this just a brown bears, black bear difference? Or is this more just, a philosophy kind of, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Right. But aiming for the shoulder is a more popular thing I've seen for the big bears. rather than aiming for more center of center, which is where Ryan and I have been taking bears for years now and what we advocate for. Is it a grizzly anatomy thing? What is?
No, it's not. So I'm going to kick this off, and James is going to vouch for everything I'm about to say, and I'm sure he'll have a few more points to kick off here. So Billy's a great guy, and he has, 20 plus years of guiding up here for different outfits, and he's, like you said, he's responsible for a lot of dead bears, and
he's a legend. He's a freaking legend.
Yeah, I thank him for that. And really, I don't think anybody else in the guiding community has done more than Billy, or really even come close in showing and giving a glimpse of what the Alaskan guide's job is, if you will, and taking you along on that hunt. And like you said, you really feel like you're there. And he does a really good job of showing that. But Billy, when Billy came up to Alaska, he worked for an old timer. I believe his first hunt was on Kodiak that he was a packer on, and old timer guide, and he learned a lot from that fella. And I worked for an old timer guide in the spring where I guide spring bear hunts. And my outfitter that I work for doesn't subscribe to shooting bears in the shoulder either. Now, as far as anatomy goes, let's just hit that first. Bears' vitals are bears' vitals are bears' vitals. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Brown bears are just a proportionately bigger animal than an interior grizzly or even a black bear is.
Right.
I have never seen a bear that has lungs that are tucked up tight behind the shoulder. It doesn't happen. Bears' anatomy is that's just how they're laid out. Generally speaking, I look center of center in between the quarters on a perfectly broadside bear, and I want to come 3 inches forward of center. And that's generally about perfect. You're just about going to center the lungs every single time. Now, the whole idea about shoulder shooting bears, this is the term that you'll see. It'll be in quotation marks, break them down.
Yep.
And that's the popular theory that we have argued with people and fought over, and good people that have killed bears that really subscribe to this theory. And their idea behind it a lot of the times comes from, well, it's such a big animal, and it has so much potential to come and just grind you into a pulp if it can after you pull the first shot off, that you want to break him down and impede his ability to either escape or attack. And number one, very few bears are going to turn and charge after they get shot. I still haven't had it happen yet. Every single time I've shot a bear, whether it's with a 30-06 or a 375, they either go straight down or they go straight away. They're always trying to just get away, because once that shock factor is induced, they've never had that happen before. It's a loud noise. It's a lot of pain immediately. Their cardiovascular system goes into shock almost immediately. And they're just trying to get away because they have no idea what's going on. Yeah. After they go on, after they're shot, about 30 seconds afterwards, they kind of switch. Even a bear shot through the shoulder, if it runs down the beach straight away from you after you've shot it, and you don't get a backup shot in it to kind of keep him going, if you will, and keep him all pumped up, about 100 yards in or more, he'll kind of slow down and he'll kind of stop. And you'll see him start to waver and get tipsy if the shot was good, and then he'll go down, or he'll kind of stop and he'll look around, and then he'll just beeline into the brush if your shot wasn't good enough. Okay. And that period after the initial shock and awe, if you will, is when they make a decision on how they're going to react to that. And a lot of times, if a wounded bear goes straight into the brush, I've found numerous dead bears that I've shot with a rifle where they go into the brush, they make a hook, and I find them dead facing right back where they came from.
Right.
And they're setting up a trap for whatever's chasing them. And you read a lot of books. I've read multiple books about African dangerous game hunting and lions that act like that as well. They're a predator, and bears kill bears and eat each other. And to them, they don't know what's happening. at best, they saw you and got a smell of something weird, but they don't really know what you are, right? They don't have the capability to process that information. They don't know that you're a different predator. All they know is their natural instinct, and that's to wait for that other big bear that just slapped him out of nowhere, that now he's got a broken leg. He runs into the brush and he's going to sit there and wait because he assumes he's getting chased by something, right?
Yep.
So a lot of guys subscribe to the theory of break him down, and then with your follow-up shots, you'll put him down, because you don't want him to be able to go far if you break down his front end. And I got a news flash for everybody out there. A three-legged bear is still a very capable killing machine.
And very fast.
And they can go a long ways in a very short amount of time on 3 legs.
A bullet in the shoulder isn't going to stop that bear. A bullet in the spine many times won't stop that bear.
Yeah. A central nervous system shot with a rifle that has enough gusto to break it or disrupt it will stop it. But I have heard, and like Mariah just said, I have heard a few stories of guys that are shooting light caliber guns that try to stop a big coastal brown bear, and they swear that they shoot it right in the spine. And I've never seen pictures to back this up, but I've been told I shot him right in the spine, and the bullet did not break that spine, and he did not stop.
Right.
So a lot of people subscribe to the break it down theory. My theory is this: if you shoot a bear, even if you only get one shot, why wouldn't you put that bullet right through the airbags, through the lungs, so that even if you have to track him, you give him enough time, 20 minutes or more, and you're tracking a dead bear, and you know it. As long as you're shooting enough rifle for the job, an adequate caliber, and a bullet of proper construction that you know is going to penetrate into the vitals and actually get there, you know you're tracking a dead brown bear, even if you only get one shot. Now, the vast majority of bears that we kill in the spring, most of us guides end up shooting the client's bears in backup scenarios. I've shot many a heart shot brown bears. Heart shot bears, they get hit and they run. There's almost no reaction on the heart shot bears, and it's strange. And I don't know why that is. When you shoot them in the ribs, a little bit farther back into the lungs, a little bit, more mid body, they just react differently. They tend to kind of do the classic coyote reaction. They'll spin, they'll stand up, they'll roar, they'll slap at it, because, like I said, they don't know what's going on. This is a new experience for them. And then they'll take off, right? And then they get all pumped up. But a heart shot bear, and I had this happen last year, a client shot a brown bear at 98 yards with a 375 H&H with a 300 grain nodular partition. Like the classic bear medicine, right?
Right.
Plenty of gun. We had a great rest. I was on my gun as backup, and he shot this bear, and his shot went just a touch low and a touch forward, and he hit the heart. And he did catch the lungs as well, but he centered the heart just about. And that bear didn't roar, didn't stand up, didn't react, didn't spin. It just turned and went straight away. And ended up taking 4 more rounds to put that bear down. And he was still very much alive when I came up on him, and he had tumbled into a creek. But the lung shot bears just, they do not live very long.
It's such a strange experience, given that we have all probably, I mean, Kansas, James over here probably shot his share of whitetails right in the heart, and they die 15 yards. They'll go boom, 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 fall over. And so you think, well, we see all these heart shot, whitetails on TV and such. And so you think, well, bear, you shoot them in the heart, same thing happens. And it's an odd thing because they do not respond like that.
Bears have a much lower blood pressure as well. And so it takes a lot longer for them to lose blood pressure, which loses consciousness.
That's why, and all I know is it to be true, because I was hunting up north in it was up north in British Columbia with Primitive Outfitting with my friend Jeff Lander, and we were up there, and we I shot a bunch of bears when I was with him over the years, and he was the first person I had spent time with who said, "Hey, where do this is where you shoot a bear, just go right up the middle, center of center, and then come forward just a little bit." And I was like, well, that seems like a bad spot to try to put a bullet, that seems like that seems like a stupid area to shoot it, given my experience,
right?
You know, and so that was the first time I was exposed to it. And he's like, "We kill 25 to 30 bears a year. I've been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah,
that's where you shoot them."
Yeah.
So that's when I started to look at anatomy, and then even when I found charts online. Yeah. They don't have the anatomy in the right spot on all these guides and outfitter and where to put the dot and all this. I'm like, that's not where a bear's vitals are.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but there's no lungs right here on your diagram. Yeah. And so that was another thing. There's a lot of just, I guess, people who are putting diagrams together that don't actually know what the hell they're talking about. Yeah. And so over the years, we have found that when we hit a bear in the middle, and maybe it's those lungs go so far back, but you got the liver, diaphragm, all that in there too. Yeah. Bears are the quickest and easiest thing to kill with a middle shot. Like they literally just die within like so fast they can't even run very far. They're dead. And when you put a bullet in all these other places, shockingly ineffective. I was watching a Meat Eater episode a couple years ago, and Clay Newcomb was out, and I think it was Giannis, and they were aiming at this bear cross canyon, and he was taking a shot angle. It was 1/4-2, and I was like, no. And then he shot it, and they were sure they got it, because that's exactly where you drill a big muley buck, no problem.
Right.
Break it through the shoulder, break that shot in there, the bullet goes in. That bear, they never found it. And I was with a buddy once, and we were on Prince of Wales Island, massive bear. It was 40, 50 yards away. He shot it with a 300. It seemed right in the chest. And it did. It went right through the chest and came out somewhere back here. We tracked that thing for miles and never found that bear. So these things they're a different animal. And they're the easiest thing to kill, I think, when you aim middle, center of center. And they're almost the hardest thing to kill when you shoot them anywhere else. Head, neck, shoulders, butt, like any of that stuff, it just doesn't do anything.
So, and the thing I would say for kind of people's mentality when it comes to that is more, just that it's the mentality of the bear hunter. You know, if you got to kind of put it in your head, the bear's going to run. Yeah. When you shoot it, there are instances where you can get a really good shot and the shock impacts those high nervous system areas, and then you can get a bear to drop instantly. And a lot of times they don't go far, but in a lot of instances, bears will run after you shoot. And I think that kind of leads to that wanting to shoot them in the shoulder and break them down, as people are afraid of that. Yeah. But if you just have that in your head and your mentality that you're going to shoot this animal, it's going to run away. Yeah. And like you said, you want to make sure you're chasing a dead bear when you're walking through that thick stuff.
So 2 things I wanted to bring up as you were talking there. I think I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I grew up reading traditional bow hunter magazine, shooting recurves and longbows. And I watched a bunch of bow hunting DVDs. And one of them was a fella in Connecticut that has a construction business and just films all of his own traditional bow hunts. And he shoots a ton of deer on film. Great guy to watch. And he loves to tuck his shots. And as a bow hunter and reading all these articles as a kid, it was ingrained in my head that a perfect, ideal archery shot on a game animal was in the armpit. Okay.
Yes.
That was when you waited until that leg was forward and you shot it a third of the way up the body, right in the armpit. And that was the ideal kill shot. Okay. Now, with bears, if you want to shoot just forward of middle, halfway up the body. Now, with a deer species, a lot of people would say if it's quartering away, you want to hit that offside shoulder. That's kind of your shoot through mentality. On a bear, I don't always want to do that. Even on a quartering away shot, I still want that bullet to come out either maybe in the back of the shoulder, or if it's not very hard quartering away, I still want that bullet to come out behind the shoulder, because the main mass of lung is still in the middle. And on a quartering 2 shot, like you said with your buddy on POW, that's a common problem with guys shooting bears front on. The bear will be standing with the front of its body turned. and he's kind of looking at you, and you think he's fully facing you, but he's really a little bit contorted. And so you think that what the shoulders look like, the body is behind it.
Right.
And you need to put that bullet on a full frontal shot. It has to go right down the middle of the chest cavity, effectively disrupting the inside of each lung, which is going to completely destroy it. It's going to die. You're probably going to get the top of the heart as well. And that is a great shot, even on a slightly quartering 2 shot, like you were talking about in that episode of that show. On that instance, that is where you want to shoot it in the shoulder. On a slightly angled towards you, you put it halfway up on the shoulder, and that is a ridiculously effective kill shot on any bear, provided that you have a heavier than average caliber rifle. That is not a bow hunting shot. There's no shot there for a bow hunter, because if you go behind it, then you're guts. If you go ahead of it, well, then you're just going to skewer that shoulder and you're not going to get anything vital. And that's a very alive bear, and he'll die of an infection a month later.
Right.
But with a rifle shot, if you're shooting a 300 Magnum, I would say, or more, for like a grizzly bear or a brown bear, for a brown bear, I don't want anything smaller than anything with a 338 in front of it for a caliber. Like for a big brown bear, it needs to be a 338 or bigger. For an interior grizzly, 300, 7 mag, something like that. And that will allow you, with a tough enough bullet, if it is an angled front-on shot of that shoulder, halfway up the body. But you need to be really good at envisioning where the travel of the bullet is going to go once it impacts the animal. And if you can't see where the rest of that body is, then you don't take that shot, because if he's twisted wrong, then it could go a completely different direction than you think it's going to go.
Yeah. Because they're not as rigid as an ungulate.
No.
They're soft and rolly and stuff, and so they can be twisted. And you could, like a gymnast or something, and you can't rely on those angles the same way.
Right.
And I think, like African animals, with their vitals are so far back, it's the same thing with bears, and it's just hard in our brains after spending so many years being taught where to put a shot that to adjust. It's a habit. Over the years, what I have done now, because I used to go take my bow, come to full draw, find the crease in the shoulder, move back just a little, or just aim for the crease.
Right.
That I could practice all year putting the arrow in the right spot, and then when the adrenaline hit, I just put it right in the crease. So now I aim for the last rib in the animal, and I move forward a little bit. I settle in the middle, and I move forward, and now I don't accidentally shoot too close to shoulders anymore. Do the same thing with the rifle, kind of come, split the animal, I move forward just a little bit. Now I'm much more successful in those shots than I used to be.
You have to completely retrain your mindset. And I know you just mentioned that, but I listen to a lot of different podcasts where guys go to Africa, and Africa is on my dream list. It is for all of us here to go there. I've been wanting to hunt Africa since I can remember. But a lot of African game animals tend to have their vitals farther forward. And the PHs will tell you have to shoot through the middle of the shoulder. And if you shoot in the ribs, you're going to gut shoot it. And that is completely befuddling, if you will, for us American hunters, because we've always been taught that the vitals are just behind the shoulder, or even, like we're saying, with a bear, back into the ribs. That is a gut shot 10 times out of 10 on anything in Africa. And so when guys go there, you'll hear that a lot from the PHs over there. You hear stories about guys that, I had a shot on a big kudu bull, and I shot him, and I didn't realize it. And the PH told me that I shot him in the guts, and I don't even remember where I aimed, because it's just second nature just to drift back to that spot.
So the vitals are further forward, not further back on African.
On a lot of African game. Yeah.
I couldn't remember. For some reason, I assumed they were further back, but I remember reading a bunch of articles where the PH was teaching these guys that where you aim on African game is completely different. And I remember thinking, but that looks just like a deer. But their internals, their internals in Africa are so different than the internals in America. It blew my mind.
Yeah. And people don't understand there's that exact same difference between American deer species and African antelope species. There's the exact same amount of difference just in the other way between American bear species and American deer species.
Yeah.
If you're going on a moose hunt, you're totally fine to shoot it behind the shoulder. And the moose lungs are half as big as our podcast table here. I mean,
I like those kind of targets.
Yeah,
like the big ones.
I don't think anybody doesn't like them. But
that's why I'm less impressed with elk archery hunters than I am with like the guys that kill giant muleys or even coos deer with a bow.
Yeah.
Because you can be off. You can go, well, I think he's 35 yards when he's 25, or you can be 25 and you could be off by 20 yards and still hit an elk, you know?
Right. You got a lot more forgiveness there. Yeah.
So let me ask you another question when it comes to bears, and that is what has been your experience? Nobody aims for guts, but what has been your experience when a bullet of the proper caliber you're discussing hits a bear in the guts? What has been it's anecdotal, right? We didn't test this, but just in the limited experience where you've seen it happen, what has been the end result?
There's a really good expression that Mo's dad uses, and you'll hear me refer to him off and on because he's been a big influence in my early years of getting into hunting. And he has a lot of stories about killing bears. He's close to 30 bears now, and most of them with his bow. And his term is they get real sick. And that's just a simple way of putting it, but they don't go far. They'll go a little ways and they'll bed down and they'll just hang out because they're, like you said, they're not that tough of a target. They're not this just animal that can just soak up the lead and just go forever. If you shoot them and you disrupt vital function, I've never gut shot a bear myself.
I haven't either.
Yeah. I don't think any of us in this room have, but we all know people that have, and they don't find them very far away. Like
my experience has been with a rifle.
Yeah.
They've died almost as quickly as if they were shot in the lungs. Now with a bow, they haven't gone far. They've been so sick that it's pretty easy to find them and follow up. They don't run very far.
Yeah.
On the other end of the spectrum though, limb hits, neck hits, shoulder hits, head hits, you're never finding that bear. You're never finding him. He's gone. Like they can take hits like no animal I've ever. You can blow off a leg and they will not care. They'll live through it. They'll keep on going.
Oh yeah. No, I think all of us here know people that have killed bears and recovered bullets in bears from years past where they've been shot already. Bears are tough in that aspect.
But when you hit them in that middle, man, they are the weakest game animal I think I've ever shot. Yeah. They're so, it's their Achilles heel. And that's why I am kind of surprised when I see something like Billy's show where they do aim a little forward, and I'm like, that is different. I see it work, on the show. I see a lot of follow-up shots, though. I do see multiple shots hitting the bear.
Yeah.
And, so it made me wonder, though, because you have a lot of different opinions on this subject, but most of the experienced bear guides I know no longer push for that. They're really going for that middle advice.
You and I discussed this the other day, and I'll say it here on the show. I think a lot of that mentality for breaking them down does come from the guide world. And it does come from the fact that the majority of guides are going to back up shoot the brown bear after the client puts the first round into it. Number one, that's a life insurance policy. If a client tells me that they don't want me to shoot their bear, then I tell them that they're going in the brush after it to track it, not me. So if you want me to crawl through the alders in the bear tunnel on my hands and knees with a rifle and a flashlight hanging out of my mouth, then I need to be able to put a bullet in your bear.
Right.
So as from that perspective, I think probably some of it comes from that mentality that, well, if the client shoots it in the shoulder, the bear is going to rear up, it's going to react, and then I can put it down. Right. And then we'll unleash the guns, if you will, and then we'll just put this thing down through sheer volume of shooting it, which does work in the event that you have a guaranteed follow-up shot if you're out in a tide flat or something like that. But I'm not going to name any names, but there are some videos in circulation of people shooting a bear in a wide open space that you would think they had all kinds of time for a follow-up shot, and they had a rifle malfunction. And that almost ended in a very poor way.
Yeah.
And you cannot guarantee that you're going to get a backup shot, even as the guide. Let's just say that there's the 1 in a million chance that the client shoots in the shoulder, you shoot, and your shot isn't true. If it even hits the bear, and then both your rifles jam. Now what? Even if you have an open tide flat that's a mile long and you're going to watch that bear run off to Never Never Land, doesn't do you any good if both your rifles are out of commission, right? So I don't like to take anything for granted, and we say this on our show all the time. You got to treat bears like a dangerous game animal. That's why we preach heavier than average calibers and ultra tough bullet construction, because you want to kill it with the first shot. Anything else is just extracurricular.
Yeah.
I think that's probably where that mentality comes from, is the guide is counting on getting a backup shot. That's probably where that comes from.
Yeah. Well, as your show has grown and it will continue to grow, and you guys keep hitting on all cylinders and providing good value to people, you're going to have more and more people follow the show and really like it. But you're also going to have this crowd of people who really are pissed off that you're sharing information about Alaska.
Alaskans are notoriously secretive people.
Yes.
So what's your plan for navigating that? Like, have you thought about it? What's your sort of,
James,
what's your philosophy here in your approach? Yeah.
Well, you know, the thing is, we don't really give away anything. Sorry, still getting used to the new mics. We don't really give away anything that is specific to a person's, let's just say, their honey hole.
Right.
You know, we're not going to tell anybody to go to this road and find this trail and then go in here and you'll probably pass this guy's wheeler. But if you keep going, you know. So what our goal to do is simply to keep people out in the woods, chasing their goals, and be as successful as possible. And if you got a problem with that, I'm sorry, but we don't really care. It's, you know, Alaska's a big state. It's a very big state, and there's plenty of room for everybody to enjoy the outdoors. And, you know, there's just this, it is a very secretive state. And I think that's honestly, the disservice of the hunting community. You know, there's a lot of,
I would say that, a lot of people, a lot of hunters have, especially let's say from the lower 48, they want to dream about it and they want to plan it. You know, a lot of there's a fact. Dopamine is a powerful stimulus, right?
Yeah.
And they've learned over the years that the pursuing of the activity or the planning of the activity is as rewarding or more rewarding. They call it the searching hormone, right? It's as rewarding as the actual activity itself. You know, for example, you know, let's use pornography as an example. So people get a dopamine response thinking about what they might come across on pornography on the next thing. Now, an opiate response is an actual climax or orgasm from that, from you know, the actual thing. So you achieved the end goal. And often there are two different responses. The more addictive response is the actual dopamine response, not the opiate response.
Yeah.
And so I think when you extrapolate that to other areas of life, half of the excitement that and the fulfillment that I feel about this upcoming hunt to Alaska and then my subsequent black bear hunts in other Western states, I plan to be out for 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Look, it's the planning. It's getting the pack rafts ready, getting the snowshoes ready. It's getting the pack gear. It's experimenting with new equipment. It's learning. It's all the planning that for how it might turn out, getting my ballistics nailed down, getting my rifle dialed. Like that pursuit is part of the enjoyment. And I think sometimes a bigger part of the enjoyment than the actual hunt itself or the actual end result of the hunt. So I think a lot of people just want to go along for the ride and maybe plan a little bit. They only plan to go to Alaska maybe once, maybe twice. But the planning, the listening to your podcast, the learning about what it's like to hunt in Alaska, that's like a whole 2, 3 year, 4 year project for some dude in Kansas.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? And so then they finally do it. I don't know that it will, the end result, because you guys know this, what it takes to actually do something like what you do up there. 9 out of 10 men, 9.5 out of 10 men just aren't ready for it. They don't want to go that intense.
Right.
Yeah.
But they still want to dream about it. They still want to flirt with the idea. And they still want to go maybe, but then maybe they'll just settle, for a boat hunt off of Kodiak, for blacktails at the end of the day, So I'm just saying, like, I think that we often as hunters are so afraid of educating, teaching, and empowering other people to do what we love to do. But at the end of the day, even with that, we still don't run into people where we go. We're still the only ones out where we're at, which tells me that, and for a lot of hunts like what we're describing, there's an element of wanting to sort of voyeuristically experience it through other people, but not actually necessarily do it yourself. And so the actual number of people, they might try it once and go, okay, that was good enough for me. The hunts that blow up, in my experience over 9 years of sharing, is like the over-the-counter tag where you can camp in a trailer and every day, it's easy hunting and you see a deer and you go for a spot and you come back that day and it's warm and you're in a t-shirt. Those hunts that aren't life and death, right? That don't require some serious planning, skill set, physical preparedness, bushcraft, all that kind of stuff. They don't tend to blow up. They don't tend to get higher and higher demand, in my opinion. But you certainly, with a big platform, can truly undermine a road hunt, right? You can really, a hunt that a lot of people feel like they could probably pull off. Those types of hunts, for sure. Someone like Randy Newberg, myself, we can really diminish. We can expose it to the public, and it can have an impact. Yeah. So,
I think a really good way of looking at what we're doing is if somebody aspires to be a professional athlete, okay, you have a better chance of being struck by lightning 3 times than a hockey player in the minor leagues does of ever playing in the NHL. Okay. Yeah. That's your odds. But that guy is still watching every video he can on the internet. He's still reading every book. He's still watching every interview with Wayne Gretzky and every great guy that's ever made it, because that's his dream. And a lot of people love to consume media in whatever platform that is, whether it's podcast or YouTube or whatever it is, about that
pinnacle experience.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why the Alaska lifestyle is so idolized. And there's not enough information for people. And like you said, that planning and that anticipation and showing people honestly that you can do it. Not every hunt in Alaska is a once in a lifetime $30,000 moose hunt. You can do things for a lot less than that. And I think it's a shame that a lot of Alaskan hunters feel like they just need to shut their mouth, and the only guys that they're going to talk about their hunts with is their family at Thanksgiving. And if that's you, then that's all right. But I feel like you're robbing people of an experience of a lifetime. And we talked about this a couple of days ago. Sheep hunting has blown up as the number one species, whether it's Rocky Mountain bighorn, desert bighorn, Dall, or stone. Sheep hunting has become the pinnacle of the mountain hunting world in the last number of years now, since I've been involved in the hunting industry. And I think a lot of that is that people wish they could do it. It's that ultimate athlete achievement. And if you killed a ram, that means you did something really, really hard, and not everybody can do that. And it's this whole other level of accomplishment, but people tend to neglect that there are a lot of other species, especially in Alaska. And you guys do it in the lower 48 with like your mountain bear hunts and your your high country mule deer hunts. You're doing those in the exact same fashion that I'm doing a Dall sheep hunt in Alaska. You're going to come to Alaska and kill a grizzly bear in the mountains in the fall the exact same way that I'm going to go sheep hunting. You're doing all of the same motions. Mm-hmm. It's just that your trophy is a different species, and society has placed a higher value on the sheep species as an accomplishment, and people have lost sight of the experience of the hunt. And that's what we're trying to explain to folks. You don't have to come to Alaska and kill a sheep to have a great bang-up Alaska hunt experience. Mm-hmm. That's not what you have to do.
Well, and like you had pointed out, with the thrill of the research and the thrill of the seeking of the hunt, that is a huge, I guess you could say high, I guess. And honestly, I mean, running a show like this and a company like this that's part of it for me too, is I love just, I mean, Dalton and I were just talking about this the other day. First thing when I wake up, I'm thinking about stuff for Northern Hunter. And the last thing I think about when I go to sleep is things for the Northern Hunter. And,
well, what's that Matthew McConaughey quote? I'm getting high on my own supply.
Well, seriously, You
tend to. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, James.
I was going to say, you tend to get stuck, and a lot of people get stuck in that loop of planning because you do get a similar dopamine effect. And so when you're looking at the maps and you're looking at the gear and you're looking at the guns and you're going to the range and everything, you get you get stuck there and you don't actually ever achieve it. Right. You constantly plan, and then maybe you just decide, well, I can't go do that moose hunt, but now I'm going to plan a sheep hunt. Yeah. And then you spend all this time planning, but you never get out of the planning phase. And that
happens a lot. I think that's more the norm than not. And it takes a special circumstance. Maybe your father passes away or a crisis or something where you're like, okay, life is short. I can't keep putting this off, or something happens to where you graduate from planning to doing. But you're going to have a lot of people who never do it. I agree. I think that one thing so Ryan Lampers is an interesting man. He's very private in general. There's a lot going on in his head that you wouldn't know because he won't say it out loud. One thing he cannot abide is elitism, arrogance. He literally is. He'll be nice and he won't say stuff, but it bothers him way more than it bothers me. I think he can't stand elitism. He can't stand, Ryan can kill whatever he wants with a bow whenever he wants. Like pick a hunt. He has as much of a chance of getting it done than anybody I've ever met. Right. He's on the top of he's one of the best. He's so damn calm. It's just uncanny. And, making bow shots, that's what it boils down to at the end, plus the natural ability to stalk and be patient that he has, the uncanny ability to predict what an animal is going to do, when it's going to do it, like those things. He's good. And so, but you know how many bow hunts he does or films? Not very many. And one of those reasons is because it's become so elitist. He's one of the better fly fishermen you've ever met. Does he fly fish ever? No, because he doesn't like the cult around it. He doesn't like the elitist culture that comes with it, the snobbery, the one of the reasons he's kind of into rifle hunting a lot more lately is because he's like, he doesn't want to be associated with the snobs. He doesn't want to be, he hates elitism. He hates it. And one thing I notice, he's not, of all the people I've ever met, he has the least interest in sheep hunting I've ever met for a guy who is you've heard him, like he just isn't interested. No sheep bug for him. And I'm like, why? At the end of the day, I think the reason why is because he doesn't like the snobbery and the elitism that comes with it. And he knows damn good and well he's done hunts as hard as a sheep hunt for other species. Your poor man's sheep hunt, like a mountain mule deer hunt.
I can promise you he has probably killed a dozen animals on hunts that he put in more sweat equity than a lot of guys have in Alaska for a Dall sheep. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah. And so I think sometimes one of the things I have noticed about Alaskans in general And I'll throw this to you and let you guys tell me. I've been on hunts. I've hung out with Alaskans. I've been on guided hunts. I've been on do-it-yourself trips. I've hung out with a lot of well-known and well-liked, some of my favorite people.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys who are from Canada who can just go out and hunt sheep and have hunted sheep for most of their lives. A lot of them with bows as well. Great. Yeah. Those are great accomplishments. I'm excited for you. I'm happy for you. But the attitude of them is gross, where they feel like they're so much better than everyone else because they killed sheep, because they did stuff with a bow, because they're, and I think they conflate the rarity of being able to sheep hunt with them being better at hunting in general. Just because only a few people like give me a freaking sheep tag, I'll kill one. It's not any harder than some of the other mountain hunts that I've been doing for years and years and years.
Right.
And yet they'll look at you like they're better because they have 3 sheep and you have none. And you're like, that's the first of all, the fact that there's a attitude of I'm better than this guy and better than that guy when it comes to hunting is kind of gross to me. Like,
right.
But I swear to you, Alaskans, sometimes, not all of them, but there's a subset of culture up there. It seems like a subculture where, look, they've earned it. Okay. They go and do hard crap. They go into where it's dangerous, where you could die due to weather or from other animals. They fly in, they boat in, or they sled into places that people in the lower 48 couldn't conceive of. They're never getting on a bush plane and landing on this beach. Nowhere, no way, no how. Right. So they've done the things and they've killed the species. They've done the stuff and they've done it on their own 2 feet. So there is an accomplishment that Alaskans have. And when they look down south, I think they look at people in the lower 48 and they go, this guy thinks he's a good hunter.
Yeah.
Because he killed some elk. He has no idea. He's doing it in September and he called a bull and he killed it. That ain't nothing. Try and kill a sheep, in the dead of winter on this peak, or a goat. That's what real hunters do. Yeah. And they literally cast stones. And I think part of the issue is they know they're good hunters. Alaskans know they're good hunters. They've done the hard things. And I think when they see the outsized attention that someone gets, like let's say in the state of Utah, for example, where all the Utards are, you're going to have this sort of attitude like, who is that guy? He gets all this. He has 100,000 people follow him and he kills like a mule deer once a year in August. This is so dumb. And the Alaskan guy who has done some really intense things that are manly, he's looking down there going, I think there's just an element of envy there that he actually should deserve in some ways far more attention than this guy down here, but doesn't get any of it. But you got, to me, it's like, it comes back down to, look, people like what's relatable.
Yeah.
And so Alaskans are going to appreciate what an Alaskan does. And there's not very many of you. Right. And you come down to Montana or let's say Idaho, there's way more people down here that can all relate. People from New York who go there every year. People who from Michigan, from Kansas, from Texas who go to Colorado every year. It's just, there's just more people that appreciate and can relate to that activity. So there's an outsized attention given to someone who accomplishes that relatable thing. But I think it breeds some envy in the Alaskan subculture where they have that attitude that comes along. It's sort of, you see it in trad communities, you see it in archery communities too. I just think it's toxic. I hate it. It bugs me. But what do you guys think? Am I just seeing boogeymen that aren't there, or am I onto something?
No.
So I would say you're onto something in a sense, but the culture as a whole, I would say it is less like that to each other.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily, when you're on a job site, I worked construction for a long time and everybody up here hunts, and there was a big thing where we just get together and we talk hunting, and yeah, some guys want to one up the other guy's story, but for the most part, we're all just there to talk and chit chat and learn and grow in our skill and swap stories. And it's just a good time. And there's not really a whole lot of elitism that takes place on that level. There is an unfortunate amount of that takes place, and unfortunately those tend to be the more outspoken guys, and especially the ones that tend to try and project their voice outside of the state. So I can definitely see how that becomes more of a generalization for the state as a whole, but in defense of the state, I have not experienced that really in my circles. I haven't experienced it. A lot of people, especially when I was new to the state, they were more than willing to take me under their wing, and regardless of the experience I had or anything, I wasn't belittled. I wasn't anything like that. And the other thing too is that we are so isolated up here, and I'm guilty of this myself. When you spend too much time in the Arctic, you kind of forget what the rest of the country's like. And you start to think of the entire lower 48 as New York City. Yeah. you think of going, right. We call it going outside. When you leave, going outside. And anytime I think about going outside, it's, man, I don't want to deal with all those people and the buildings and the traffic and the noise. And it's just, and then I went to Gardner, Montana for New Year's this last year, and it was gorgeous, and there was wildlife everywhere, and it was just this wide open landscape, and I couldn't hunt, but I was out there hiking around and trying to pretend I was hunting. And I mean, it blew my mind how much you forget that there are still wild places in the lower 48.
That's I think one of the things that Brian notices is we go to some places that are every bit as intimidating and rugged and wild, where we're headed. And so to have someone, let's say from Alaska, think that we don't have that here. I could see, though, you're in a bit of a bubble, and you tend to overlook how vast the Wyoming wilderness is. How vast some of these areas in Idaho, Montana, and even Colorado are. And so I think I could see that.
I was going to say, a few years ago, Dalton showed me some of your videos, and I loved them. And honestly, I can say that for the first time I realized that there were hunts in wide open spaces in the States, because I grew up here, and I've done some whitetail hunting in the States, and I killed a whitetail with a bow, and it was easy. It was a lot of fun. I had to put in my time for it, and I'm glad I did. It wasn't just, one and done. But, when I saw some of your films hunting high country black bears and honestly, your bear hunts are the ones I really watch and, take the time to, I don't watch hardly anything, but when I do watch something, it's one of your bear hunts. But, it really opened my eyes to the fact, there is actually some good hunting down there. That's not just, and I love whitetail hunting. I think it's an absolute blast. I love sitting in a tree stand. There's a whole different element to it. We don't really have anything up here like that. But
I'm with you, Mo. I'm with you. I feel like I was out hunting with Pedro Ampuero, and we were hunting bears. And he said to me, first of all, the appreciation for this vast tracts of public land where we didn't run into a soul and we had this whole place to ourselves. He didn't see a single other human other than us the whole 10 days. So that blew his mind. The vast open country, the mountains, the gorgeous. We're sitting here watching goats and bears in the same frame at the same elevation and cliffs. He's blown away, right? Blown away. And he says, so that shocked him. But then he was like, this was every bit as rugged as the most epic hunts I've done in some of the most epic places in Asia and Mongolia and where these big other goats live and stuff. And he's like, there's way more than I realized out there. And I think that we have a lot. That's why sometimes I get a little defensive when people say that we're ruining hunting. And it's not a big group, but there's a small subset of people who feel that way. And I think, man, there is so much down here that people get to see. That's amazing that nobody really makes the effort to see. That's why I was saying back earlier, I don't know that a lot of people plan but don't do. So, but back to what Pedro was saying, he's like, Brian, this was awesome. This was crazy. The packs, he never backpack hunted like this before. You know, everywhere he's ever gone, like if they did go in, they had like horses take it in, like in Mongolia and stuff. Or it was 2 days and you come back out, or if you spend the night at all. So for him, this was like 10 days. We just camped wherever we wanted to. We just went from one basin to the next. That was all new for him. But after the trip was over, he goes, hey, Brian, do you guys ever do any fun hunts? And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, where you just go out and have fun and you just like shoot bows at like deer and just do a fun hunt. Do you ever do just stuff that's fun? And back to what you were saying, Mo, I actually love whitetail hunting. It's kind of this dirty secret. It's not much of a secret, but I love it because you just go out each day and, sit in a stand or a blind or spot and stalk, whatever. It's not like high stress, high stakes. You're eating good meals every day. You're hanging out with friends at a campfire. You might even just call a day, not hunt at all. And it's just like, it's a different thing. And those fun hunts, I think are what most of the public does. 80% of hunters, 90% of hunters, that is what they think when they think hunting.
Your dreamer population.
Exactly. Then they want to watch what we do and say someday, but then they want to go in their backyard and hunt whitetails again. And so I think there's room for both for sure. I think we need both. And I like to do both, but back to what you were saying, Mo, I think there are incredible hunts in the lower 48 that Alaskans should do.
I know that one of the most frustrating things for any of us in this room, and I'm sure for you as well, is you spend all the time to find a spot and you figure out your route. You haven't had time to scout it ahead of time. You're going there as soon as season opens, and you get there and there's 10 other pickup trucks in the lot, right? And that's the perception that I had. And admittingly, like Mariah said, and I've told you this before, the first set of spring bear films that you put out with Ryan and when you went out with Jeff years ago, that initial series was really my first actual look at what the lower 48 had the capability of being. Because most other hunting production channels in the lower 48, they show them pulling into a parking lot and there's a half dozen other pickups there. And immediately in my mind, I'm thinking that's not wild enough. If I show up to a spot to sheep hunt and there's 6 other pickup trucks there, I'm going to keep on driving to a different spot. And I have backups for my backups because I don't want to be there if there's already 6 other guys in there because I don't feel like that's the experience that I want. And that doesn't exist everywhere in Alaska. By a long shot, that doesn't exist everywhere up here. But it certainly doesn't exist everywhere down there. And I think Alaskans get this undue sense of elitism, like you were mentioning, because of the finiteness of our resources. We like to feel that we're special because we get to kill this special animal, when in reality, you guys have some of the most difficult terrain on the continent down there in the Rockies. Some areas even more dangerous than the mountains we have up here. If anybody goes sheep hunting in the Brooks Range of Alaska, for the most part, the Brooks Range is like the easiest set of mountains you'll ever sheep hunt in. And I can say that because I've done it. It's not that technically difficult. The Alaska Range, the Talkeetnos, the Wrangles, the Chugach are more steep, rugged, jagged.
Those can be scary.
Those are a lot different animal. However, there are spots identical to that and even worse. And your last bear hunt film that had Pedro and Brady and Ryan along on that one, I watched that series and I thought, man, that is exactly what sheep terrain is like where I've gone. That's exactly what it's like. And people act like Alaskans act in a way of snobbing, if you will, other hunters from the lower 48, as if the lower 48ers couldn't kill moose, bear, sheep, mountain goat every year if those species lived in the Rockies, because they absolutely could. It's just a lack of opportunity based off of geographical placement. And I know somebody personally who lived in the lower 48, grew up hunting and fishing, really wanted to come to Alaska to hunt someday, and he moved up here because his only entry difficulty was the cost of non-resident tags. So he moved up here, became a resident, got a job, and now he shoots everything in the state.
Yeah.
You know, I was say one more thing on the Alaska elitism. Growing up here, there was just really honestly, even just growing up, most of my hunting experience growing up with my dad was a lot of road system hunts. And you can get away from people on road system hunts in Alaska. Yeah, you really can. And on wheelers. And I have more wheeler experience than both of these guys combined. You know, and I push my wheeler way further back than I find trails that nobody knew a trail was there because nobody rode it for 30 years because it was so bad. But I get back there and there's nobody else back there.
Yeah.
But the growing up in Alaska, I had this sense, even as a kid, that and I know it wasn't anything my dad tried to put into me, but it's just I had a sense that I lived in this great state. And, you know, he always told me you should be thankful because what you're doing, you know, killing bears is what, you know, everybody in the lower 48 wishes they were doing. And there's a lot of truth to that. But it also gave me a sense of, hey, I live in a better spot, so I'm better. And it's not true. And it's a totally false feeling. But I think, you know, I know guys who I don't agree with most of the ways they hunt. They think they're better than they don't want lower 48ers up here, period. They don't like the military guys. They don't like the fact that the military bases are here and you've always got this influx of guys who have no idea what they're doing in the field. You know, and I don't like that either. And that's part of the reason we started this podcast.
Right.
But with, you know, we were talking about shooting in the shoulder. And I know a guy who will shoot, he wants to shoot any animal in the shoulder just because he doesn't want to go anywhere. I mean, you're talking about ruining meat.
Yeah. That shot.
I didn't mention that before, so I thought I'd say that now. But
it's true.
I don't like it, especially on black bears, because that's so much good meat.
We're eating every piece of meat off of the black bear too.
Yeah. And Pedro, one of the first things he said was, "Shoot him in the head, Brian." We were sitting there on this bear for an hour and a half, you know, and I had lots of shots, and he's like, "Shoot him here and shoot him there," and I'm like, "No, Pedro, no." And so that went on, and then finally, after I shot the bear, he's like, "I don't understand. Look at this video. Look at when he was sitting here and his shoulder was there. Why didn't you just shoot him there?" And like, what? It seemed like you were excessively waited too long, and then the shot you took seemed weird. And again, that comes from that not having that experience with bear anatomy. But two, I was like, Pedro, bear meat is like gold. It's the thing. I want to put a bullet where I salvage as much meat as I can. Right. And so I was putting a bullet where it would go in and where it would exit, where it wouldn't ruin anything. And I didn't lose any meat at all. And that's
you don't want to shoot it in the head because that skull goes on the wall.
Well, and it doesn't really work. Like I've seen bears shot in the head, and it's like, I don't know what the hell they're made out of, but I've seen them shot in the head, and I've seen them just drop, and then I've seen them run off in the woods and never be found again. And you're like, but the bullet went in his head. Like that should have concussed or knocked him out or whatever. But I don't know.
You actually enter the brain cavity, you can end up with a really goofy looking bear that's going to live a long time, with a deformity.
But Mo, you touched on that. I think that it's very easy to. I don't think it's unearned to, in some ways, go, hey, you know, I'm better, because many of you have to do it in dangerous winter conditions that. The guys in Nevada don't really deal with, you know, like there are some elements that are unique to Alaska for sure, that are, that have their dangers. But I would say, like, I'm way, way more afraid of a Wyoming grizzly bear or a Montana one during elk season than any bear I meet in Alaska. Way more afraid.
Absolutely.
And so I got to give props to some of these dudes that are out there, you know, in some of this country killing big bulls, you got to be looking over your shoulder with those man-eating grizz. And so it's kind of, I think it's earned, but also can be a little overinflated because there's a lot in the lower 48 that has its dangers and difficulties and challenges. And so I'd like a little less myself. I just think a little less elitism in the hunting space, period.
Yeah.
A little more humility, a little more grace, a little more appreciation. Who was it the other day was on the show and they said, if it's legal, maybe it was Clay Newcomb on Meteor, said, if it's legal, we shouldn't trash on anybody for it.
That's exactly right.
If you don't want to do it, that's fine. Like if you don't want to bait bears or hunt cats with hounds or whatever, if you don't like it, but it's a legal method of take and it's a management tool. It's been around for a long time. Look, it's not your style. That's fine. But we shouldn't go after anybody who doesn't hunt the way we do. And that goes for anybody who is a hardcore bow hunter and doesn't really think rifle hunting is for them. Fine, but don't go out of your way to undermine or to hate on someone who rifle hunts. And same with Pickett, Yeah.
Well, and we had touched on that in one of our previous episodes as well. Dalton had brought it up as an intro segment, and the general thing that we came to, and this is kind of the part that we finished up that segment with, was if you feel that way, a lot of that elitism comes from isolation. I don't even know if isolationism is a word, but I'm going to use it. But it's being isolated in your group. The sheep hunters hang with the sheep hunters, and the bear hunters hang with the bear hunters, and the Alaskans hang with the Alaskans. It's if you take the time to reach out from outside your group. If you don't like hound hunting, reach out to a hound hunter and talk to him. Yeah. Actually find the history of it.
Go along on one.
One. Do some research into the background, the history, the heritage of hound hunting and why a lot of people do it. Yeah. Bear baiting, same thing. A lot of people don't like bear baiting, but if you actually research it and look into it, there's a lot of really good reasons to bear bait, and it's a lot harder than people think it is.
Yeah. Carry some bait in for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Come carry 100 pounds of dog food and we'll see.
Totally.
But if you just sit down, share a meal, share some drinks, get some conversation going, and just come to terms, I guarantee you'll find common ground. And I guarantee there's a common passion there. There's commonality between all styles of hunting, all methods of take. Yeah. We're all out to do the same thing. It's just might look a little different for some people.
Yeah.
And
I know the point that I had made on our show, and I actually got that exact point from what you mentioned that Clay had said. If it's legal and it's ethical, and ethical embodies equipment, experience, competence, all of that is wrapped up in ethics. Ethics is a very broad shotgun type of a term, at least in my eyes. But if it's legal and it's ethical, then you ought not be hating on it, because right now the hunting space is in more of a position of being attacked than it's ever been before. And that comes about from the media world and the cancel culture and wokeism. And that whole culture is looking to shoot holes in hunting, proverbially speaking. And if we divide ourselves from the inside, if we have the sheep hunting crowd, if we have the moose hunting crowd, if we have the ATV hunting crowd and the boat hunting crowd and the airplane hunting crowd, just in Alaska alone, we can get divided on species and how we think we're more capable a hunter than Joe Blow that only ever kills moose and never has gone on sheep hunt in his life. And he has he has a big beer gut and he wears flannels and shoots moose every year.
Right.
Instead of going to the gym and going sheep hunting every year and wearing cutting edge, nice clothing. And I mentioned that exact thing. Brand snobbing off of what color camo pattern you wear. How childish can we get? And that has gotten
I told you that. Really, I told you, Dalton, that one of the reasons that you don't see me in very much camouflage anymore, or even any single brand of gear, is because the tribalism that comes with it.
Yeah,
right. It literally is a weird cult for each group.
Yeah.
And what I found was I don't want to be part of any of these groups. I'm just Brian. When you look at me, I don't want you to say, oh, Tribe Sitka, Tribe Kuyu, Tribe First Light, you're Meat Eater, you're this. It's like, no, I'm just Brian, and I like to hunt. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be known for me and what I do. I don't want to be put into a group. Yeah. And camo, man, that's one of those things that
I think President Lincoln probably said it best: a nation divided against itself will not stand. Mm-hmm. And the hunting culture as a group, if we look at ourselves as a nation, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that's a very broad way of looking at this, but if the hunting culture as a whole divides itself because well, I don't like hound hunting, that's not ethical.
Right.
Maybe not in your eyes, but it's legal and it's ethical to the guy in Louisiana who can't get theirs any other way.
You bring up a great point. I mean, years ago, I read this. It was after Cedric the Lion was shot, and Ranella wrote a thing, and he talked about this whole thing where he said, look, we should all stand together, but also if hunters are shooting holes in the boat, I want to throw them out of the boat. So there is a balance between like accepting what everybody says, but I think it comes down to that the comment you made on ethics. And this is the thing that I've always thought philosophically is an interesting. I always put this to people when we get into this debate, and that is this: ethics. When it comes to ethical hunting, there's two sides to this coin. One is the most efficient, clean, humane kill known to man, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which inevitably would result in the least degree of fair chase. Right. I mean, hell, you can fly a drone over there and smoke it. You're guaranteed you didn't wound it, or like pick a weapon that's far more advanced than the next. But if you're going to say, well, ethically, you need to give the animal the greatest chance of escape, then it's a handmade stick bow with your own Folsom tipped arrows made out of stone, right? But the inverse of that is, okay, now I'm giving them the biggest chance possible of escape because I'm using the most primitive, unreliable equipment. Some of my arrows fly this way a little bit, and some do this. If I tweak it just right, I can kind of shoot that stick bow, a good 15 yards with accuracy. But sometimes, I get a flyer. Well, that ain't the same as shooting some compound that you can hit a dime at 50 yards every single time. You're talking about different levels of equipment, and ethics is a combination of fair chase, greatest chance of escape, and efficacy of the weapon being used and how much the technology gives you an advantage. And so you can't have it both ways. You can't say, I want it to have the best chance of escape and it's so easy for it to get away because I use a stick bow. But also say you're more ethical, because guess what? You're not going to hit the animal as well as the guy with the precision tool that shoots it with a rifle at 100. Like, so you have to, when you talk about ethics, you have to define it. And what does that exactly mean? If I'm an animal, and I've said this 100 times on the show, if I'm an animal and I'm being hunted by Dalton, okay? What do I want Dalton to use to come after me? The crappiest stick bow he can find with the most bent arrow shafts made out of stones. Like, I want, hell, use a slingshot. Bring it, baby. Like, that's what I want you to hunt me with. Right? As an animal, to me, that's what I want to be hunted with, knowing that it also presents with me the greatest chance of a slow, painful death as well. As you hit me in the guts, and because the arrow is just not as accurate and things aren't as precision. But the odds of you actually getting that arrow in me is so slim in comparison to the other. I'll take those chances, right? Right. And so for me, it's like when people hate on, let's say, traditional bow hunting because it's not as effective, I'm like, yeah, but the flip side of that ethic argument is that you're giving the animal the greatest chance of escape. And to me, that has value. On the other side, when someone says it's just immoral to shoot at 400 yards an animal, and it's like, Yeah, but I got meat and it was clean and efficient and legal, and I harvested it and I took it home.
Yeah.
You can't, you have, like, it's a more nuanced discussion, and people, I think, often just think their way, and that's the right way.
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying. And I think a lot of what we've mentioned before about not only legality, but assuming that you're partaking in a legal hunt in every sense of whatever that means. Mm-hmm. Ethics is very nuanced for different individuals. An ethical rifle shot for brand new Bob that just bought a rifle at Sportsman's Warehouse and has never shot anything bigger than a paper plate past 50 yards. An ethical shot for beginning Bob, and I'm sorry for anybody out there that's a beginner and its name is Bob. An ethical shot for that guy is not the same as an ethical shot for me with a purpose-built rifle that I've got a hand-loaded cartridge for, that I have spent literally hours at the range and at longer ranges than we have at our rifle range, shooting steel targets out to whatever maximum distance I know my bullet performs at. And that's where that's why we park on ballistics so often.
Yeah.
Because everybody likes to talk about and shoot on YouTube and kill elk with a 6.5 Creedmoor at 1,000 yards. And that just makes me mad to no end.
Yeah.
And ethics is directly in correlation to ballistics when you don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Ethics is directly tied to that, because you need to know at what distance is my platform now not 100% reliable, that I know what the bullet's going to do when it impacts the animal, right?
Yeah.
And so ethics, for me with a trad bow, I have zero problems shooting a bear with a recurve. I've done it. It was my first bear. I was 17 years old, and that bear went maybe 8 yards, spilling blood out of both sides like a tap, and keeled over. He never knew what happened. And I've killed 2 other bears with a compound since then. Mariah's killed 3 with a compound. None of our bears have ever gone over like 40 yards.
Yeah.
But a lot of bow hunters are not at that place. And ethics, I do definitely agree with what you're saying. And I think that a lot of the trad bow community especially is guilty of this nuanced position that, well, I'm giving the animal the greatest chance possible. Yeah, but you're also snap shooting, and there's no form to your archery, and you sling a couple of arrows at a hay bale before every time you go sit in the stand. That's not competence with your weapon.
Right.
And I think that varies greatly from hunter to hunter. That's a big reason of why we do the show the way that we do it, with a lot of our education being wrapped around ethics. And when you get yourself to the position, if that brown bear is at 125 yards, well, that's not a bow shot. So as you creep in, what is your max distance with your bow to kill a dangerous game animal? And how do you practice to stretch yourself out far enough? Right. And at what distance do you not trust your equipment to perform? Yeah. And having that you have to have that knowledge already determined in your own head. You have to know that before you get a black bear like you guys that's 600 yards across the canyon. You know that your equipment might be able to do that, but you've never actually shot that gun that far. Now is not the time to make that shot.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people don't follow that.
I always say with a bow or a rifle, it's like, nowadays it's shoot the shot you can make. Now nobody knows 100%, but hold out for the shot you just you pretty much is undeniable that you can't miss.
Yeah.
And I've hunted with some killers who put animals to stack up animals. They're the Wayne Gretzky's, you miss every shot you don't take guys. They're the ones that are sending it and they hit part of it, and then they track it, and they hit it again, and they hit it again. And by the next day, they finally have it, and they've killed it.
They wound it to death.
Yeah. I've been on those trips so many times, especially early on. And then I hunted with lampers.
Yeah.
And Ryan doesn't shoot until it's a shot he pretty much can't miss. Yeah. It's ridiculous. That elk hunt that we published a little bit ago, where that elk comes to like 6 yards and he shoots it, he could have shot it when it was at 39. 90% of the hunters out there would have tried to put that in at a quartering two shot. Not him. And what he ended up with, he got rewarded with a shot at like, stone's throw, like right there with the perfect kill, and it died right away. And that's the thing, like, he's like, yeah, I could make that shot, but it's not a shot I know I will make, like that it will do exactly what I want. And so he is willing to, he has walk away power. He can let it walk away. He can walk away from that moment and say, yeah, maybe I didn't get it. Oh, well, I'll find another one. A lot of new guys, they don't have walk away power. They think this is the only chance I'll ever have in my life. This is a trophy bull. I gotta shoot my shot. Right. And in the end, I think it ends up.
I
did that. I did that for years. I lost a lot of animals I should have killed. That was my thing. I always shot too soon. Always. And nowadays, with a bow in hand, I'm coming home with animals that I didn't used to come home with, because I didn't take the shot at 50. I didn't take the shot at 40. I didn't take the shot until he was at 25 yards.
Yeah.
Before I would have let it fly at 50, probably not made it, and it would have ran away, and I come home without an animal.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I don't even take the shot unless it's like, oh, I can't miss now. I'm in it. I'm feeling good. The pin is settled, and all I've had to teach myself is more patience. Waiting. Yeah. And I think that is those ethics right there.
It is. It's the kind of the unspoken side of ethics. People talk about which weapon you're using, what range you're using it at, and things like that. But a lot of it is just that patience and having to know how, like you said, when to walk away. One of my greatest mentors in hunting, he's killed everything he's ever pointed his gun at, and people ask him all the time, well, how do you do that? You've killed everything you've shot at. And that's exactly how he explained it to me is I don't take low percentage shots. Yeah. I wait and I wait. If the animal's running and the wind is bad and it's quartering too hard and everything, that animal won. Well, and that's a concept that's hard for people to understand when they work so hard, especially to get into an area and you're looking at a legal sheep maybe, and it's just not a good shot opportunity.
I tell myself all the time, though, nowadays, it's yours to screw up. It's yours to screw up. You can live to fight another day just as long as you don't do something stupid. Right. You can keep tightening that noose and keep tightening that noose and tight until finally you clinch it so tight it can't get away and you make that shot. It might take 3 days instead of one to finally do it, but it's yours to screw up. Most of the time on these mountain hunts that are very remote, it's yours to mess up. If you don't mess it up, you're probably going to score in the end. You just got to have the patience not to shoot too soon.
Right.
I think a lot of that impatience, again, we talked about this earlier, but with the experience not being at the forefront, people are so focused on the kill and so focused on the bragging rights, if you will, and the social status that comes with, oh yeah, killed a legal ram on day one again and again and again, and they do it over and over and over again, and that's great. But I know a lot of people, and it's and the ram illustration was just because that's what came to mind. But there are a lot of people in any species of hunt, for that matter, that like what Lampers did at 39 yards, they're taking that shot because they're not willing to risk that animal walking away because the kill is more important to them than the patience that it might take to kill it in the end with a much higher percentage shot.
Right.
And they're so fixated on that they're willing to take a lower percentage shot. And someone told me this, if you're about to touch off a shot, whether it's with a bow or a rifle, and you do not know 110% that you're going to kill the animal with that shot, then you have no business shooting at that point.
The thing is, Dalton, though, is that's a tall order because sometimes, you're at full draw at 39 yards and you're like, dude, I've made this shot a million times on that target in my backyard. And you're shaking like a leaf and it's like you're on crack and your adrenaline's going and you're like, and you black out and you fire, it's like, I think that is not a sinister move by a person. That's a naive move, an ignorant move, a move where they haven't. Says, I had to make a lot of mistakes before I stopped making mistakes, and I had to learn through some bad shots that in the end I didn't get the end result I wanted because of that lack of patience.
Mm-hmm.
And
hopefully people that are listening to this show will hear people like us that have made those mistakes, and they'll avoid doing that.
Well, and one easy way to do that, and this is something I preach to a lot of people, is that efficacy starts in the preparation phase.
Mm-hmm.
Like you had pointed out, make the shots you can make. So practice making shots you might have to make.
Yeah.
If you know you're not always going to be on the bench, don't shoot off the bench.
Yeah.
You know, shoot prone, shoot crouched, shoot freehand.
Yeah.
If you know you might have to shoot past 100 yards, don't spend all your time at the 100-yard range.
Yeah.
Find somewhere to extend out to verify your lethal range at 200.
Yeah, and that builds confidence.
400.
Right.
That builds so much confidence. Like the 3D range, you're going out and you're doing a tack event, and you're like, man, I stacked these in the kill zone on 99% of these targets. I'm ready. Or you know what? Any target over 50, I have an effective range, and today's course taught me I need to be aiming at something at 40 yards and in. And you learn to then, because I think here's the deal: when you go out and you're getting ready to shoot something, and you know, when you think of when I was young and I had my bow in my hand and I was stalking something, I was excited to get the shot, the opportunity.
Right.
I was like focused on the shot. I got an arrow off, you know, like I did it. Instead of thinking I got a dead animal.
Yeah.
I was thinking I got the opportunity.
Right.
When I started to sort of change my mindset to who cares if you get a shot?
Yeah.
It's pointless if you don't kill it. Like, it's a waste. Then I started to focus on, instead of taking a shot, just being happy with a shot, I started to go, no, only make that shot when it's going to go right through the vitals. Like, otherwise, hold out. A shot doesn't mean jack. Shot ain't any good. The shot doesn't mean anything. It didn't make me a better hunter because I got a shot.
Right.
And because I'd come home with lots of stories about the shots I got when I first started elk hunting with a bow in my early 20s. I'm like, I got a shot on this giant. You should have seen it. And it's like, that was like, at the time, that was a notch in the belt, right? And later, you know, you grow up a little bit and you start to go, wait a minute, that doesn't mean anything. You know, start being more patient. And,
Yeah,
I agree.
Well, fellas, I got to say, I really enjoyed this conversation. We should do it again, especially like maybe when I get back from Alaska, do a little Alaska grizzly hunt, bear recap. We'll see if we can get Ryan Lampers to join us, and we'll do the group of us. That would be fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We'd love
to. Where can folks find your show? Instagram, socials.
Yep. So if you search at the Northern Hunter on Instagram or Facebook right now, you'll find our pages. We also have a website that is thenorthernhunter.com. That's where we post all of our content kind of first there. And we actually, so the Northern Hunter is aspiring to be a lot more than just a podcast. This is kind of our flagship product here, but we post articles on the website and kind of our own insight on hunting in Alaska, and there's more to come. So all those updates will be there, and so we're very excited for what the future's bringing for us. So
if you have the desire to follow us individually, then I am at The Endless Hunter on Instagram. I don't get on Facebook very much, so don't follow me on there. I never post But if I post anything, it's on Instagram. It's at The Endless Hunter. And Mo, what's your handle?
Mo Adrenaline.
Yep.
Nice.
And I am Far North Hunter on
Hunter.
Instagram there. Yeah.
And
so
we'll put a link in the description field of this YouTube video for those that are listening. You just go to the Gritty YouTube channel and you can find the podcast. We'll put a link in there, and then they can always go, it looks like, to northernhunter.com, thenorthernhunter.com.
Yep. That's us.
And then they can find your show on Spotify, iTunes,
and everywhere
podcasts can be found.
Yep, we are everywhere. So.
And we release a show every Monday.
Yep.
So
I believe at 6 a.m.
Yeah, 6 a.m. Alaska time.
At 6 a.m. Alaska time. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about 2 a.m. Eastern time.
So
sweet. I love it, guys. Thanks for jumping on the call, folks. Go check out the Northern Hunter podcast. And I'm excited to see where it goes. And I'll be listening, as I am now an avid annual Alaskan hunter. I'm one of those evil infiltrators coming up north. So,
well, we love that you're doing it, and man, thank you for this opportunity, and it's been great. I've had a blast. So,
thanks for having us on, Brian. We appreciate it.
For all your
pleasure.
Support. It means a lot. So.
All right, guys, folks, thanks for tuning in. Stay ready.